We got Cedric Maxwell, Phil Perry here with me. Right, Cedric? Like, I'm not wrong, right? Like, isn't there still just a teeny seed of doubt that's like, Miami's good. They beat you before.
Miami's good, but at the end of the day, Miami doesn't have the talent that the Celtics have. I think when you start looking at from top to bottom, I think you look at this team and they have all the pieces. Miami, I was talking to Bob McAdoo, who used to be a scout really for Miami, he's an assistant coach, and he said, look at the roster. He said, where do you see the first-round draft picks at? Where do you see the high first-round draft picks? Those are with the Celtics. And you look at Miami, some of the guys right now were G League players. So I think it's a long ways from being over, but I'm very confident about what the Celtics can do.
Why do you think it's a long way from being over?
I think it's a long way from being over, just the fact of just sheer numbers of getting out, playing the game. Because I think Jimmy Butler said one thing that I loved. If I was a player over there, he said they tried to embarrass us.
Yeah.
And then he added this, and they did. So, they're going to come out with a vengeance. But Celtics playing at home right now, I love their chances.
It's over. Sorry, guys. That's where I'm at right now. I don't have the same concerns that you have. I don't think they're as talented as the Celtics, so I agree with you on that front, Max. They're not as talented as the Bucks. And the Celtics dispatched the Bucks. I'm not sure the Heat are even as tough as the Bucks. The Bucks have this championship pedigree. They have a superstar who, even if you really focus your efforts on that guy, you can't stop him. Does the Heat have that kind of player? I don't think so. And so, to me, the Celtics are more talented. They're deeper, Max.
Did Jimmy Butler do something that just came out that the Celtics have stopped him?
No, I'm just saying, if you focus your energy, Max, he's not on Giannis's level. You would agree with that.
No,
he's not Giannis. He's not Durant. So that's what I'm saying. They're just not. They don't have the upper echelon talent that some of these other teams have had.
I agree.
And when I look at the Celtics right now, Trenni, to your concerns about their maturity and whether they're going to be able to keep their heads, I've had those same questions this year before myself. Mine have been answered. I mean, they have bounced back at every single turn. To me, they are a grown-up team. They're all grown up, Trenni. I'm done questioning whether or not they're mature enough to keep winning at this level.
I guess my concern is, though, that they still have to have had to bounce back at times, Max, right? Like, they have, in what was it, Game 5 against the Bucks, like, they shot themselves in the foot. They took their foot off the gas, and then they shot themselves in the foot. It was like a double mistake. Like, they still sometimes fall into those lapses where they're forced to climb back.
Well, that is true, but I think at the same time they came out of those lapses. Every time the Celtics play poorly, something happens and they really play well. I think that is true. And Trenni right now, the sky is not falling right now. It's
not. I'm
really
psyched about it. I think they're more talented.
They're okay, yeah.
I got really...
You are nervous Nelly Boston. That's what that is.
I think I won Max over. I think that's all that happened here in the last 5 minutes.
I have been,
it's over. Just say it. It's over. It's okay.
I've been converted to a full asshole like Brad.
It's over.
Smart with a 12-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio last night. In his last 3 games, that total is 29-3. Marcus Smart is where we begin our deep dive. We got Cedric Maxwell still here, plus Hardy from 98.5. The Sports Hub is here with us. Hardy, could you have imagined, we were talking in the break, like, is there a more maligned guy on the Celtics who it's just like, we were calling for his head at the trade deadline, and now you could argue he's one of the most important Celtics. I'm not sure that 5 years ago I would have looked at this and been like, yeah, he's going to be integral into them possibly going to the NBA championship.
Maybe you got a mouse in your back pocket. Careful with the inclusive pronoun we. I was never calling for Marcus Smart to be traded or be anywhere other than on the Celtics. And I know he's been the subject of a lot of criticism. And it ranges everything from shot selection, like we were discussing, Max, to whether or not he was asserting himself too much as a leader on the team. But quite frankly, in a leadership void and on a team I think that could have used some grown-up maturity and maybe some tough love, Marcus was there in a pinch, and he's continued in that role, and now you're seeing it bear fruit.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me is that when we often have talked about the Celtics championship success, it's always centered around Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But today, all 3 of us, and Phil Perry is going to join the conversation in a second, we were asked to give our top 5 most important Celtics. I put Ime Udoka at the top. Hardy, I think you put Jason Tatum. Max, trolling, amazing. You put Danny Ainge. Not terrible, though. He did build most of this team. He did draft the biggest guys. But what's the most interesting is all of us have Marcus Smart ahead of Jaylen Brown. Hardy, you have him as the second most important. Max and I have him as the third most important. But you have Jaylen Brown as 5th, Hardy, on your list. Max, Jaylen Brown doesn't even make your list. Why is Marcus Smart more important than Jaylen Brown?
Well, because I think he anchors the defense. And I've said this before, and people understand this, that when you talk about Marcus Smart is the best defender the Celtics have ever had under 7 feet. And everybody talks about Dennis Johnson, how great he was. I played with Dennis Johnson. I know Dennis Johnson. Dennis was. But the way he competes and the way his teammates appreciate him and what they do. And you could see it. Did you see how he chewed them out the other day?
Yeah.
I mean,
in his fun pink outfit. Yeah.
And what you saw was a response in this next game. I saw him out by the pool trying to get himself ready. His foot seemed like it was hurting and bothering him. But, man, he came out, and his effort at the initial point of attack is always key when you play in an important game like this.
Why'd you have him so high? I mean, you had him 2nd on your list, only behind Tatum.
Well, he is the prototypical guy, and I'm sure Dennis Johnson was the same way, Max, but teams hate to play against him. I think you've got a psychological advantage if you're the Celtics every time Marcus Smart is going to be taking the floor for you, not just because teams hate to play against him, but they've got good reason to hate to play against him. His defense is tenacious.
Jimmy Butler did not attack the rim the way he did against everybody else when Marcus was on the floor with him. And that was a simple fact.
Marcus makes guys uncomfortable with his defense. The reason I had him so high as well is because the offense also runs through him, and I feel like he has settled that offense down, and they get a little bit out of a rhythm. But what I find interesting is you didn't even. Why are you laughing at me?
Because I just can remember all the people right now in Boston right now. As soon as Marcus got rid, don't shoot, Marcus, please.
Full disclosure, last night early in the game when he was chucking up threes, I was like, stop shooting the ball.
And he kept knocking them down. He has to be in that position. And that's what I love about this team right now.
Why don't you have Jaylen Brown at all on your list?
I love Jaylen Brown. As a matter of fact, I love Jaylen Brown. But if you ask me the list of guys you talk about, I have him down the list because I don't see him as that guy right now. He will grow into that position. He is a leader. He's one of my favorite players. But if you ask me, it's Danny Ainge first, because Danny Ainge brought all these guys in. And then Brad Stevens did what we didn't think he was going to do by bringing in and buying all the grocery.
Hardy, would you put Marcus Smart on the same level as a Draymond Green?
Oh, that pains me. I mean, as a Spartan, I love Draymond Green, but I'll say this. I like Marcus Smart because he doesn't come with all the flagrants that come with a player like Draymond Green. I mean, Marcus Smart can still get in the guy's kitchen and still bother
control
him
himself
incessantly throughout the night without kicking someone in the jimmy and then having to sit out a pivotal Game 5 in a big series. I mean, we've seen it with Draymond, haven't seen it to that extent with Marcus, so I'll put him in the conversation in terms of who I would like to have on my team in a big series like this. Sure.
He's a better offensive player than Draymond. Yeah. He's more explosive than Draymond.
Draymond in the paint was, Draymond in the paint.
People don't even play in this, you see this stuff right here? This green stuff right here? They don't even play at that anymore. That's old passe. What Marcus Smart does, he controls the game. And I talked to Ime about this. And he said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm giving the keys right now this year to Marcus Smart, and I'm going to let him be the facilitator. And sometimes it drives me crazy when Marcus throws one of these grounders or curling balls. And he said, you know what I told Marcus? I said, Marcus, you got one time to do that. And you'll see Marcus throw one of those passes, and all of a sudden you'll go, my bad.
Right.
And so he's controlled the narrative.
That's why I put Ime at the top of my list, because he has managed those guys perfectly. Well, not everyone feels the same about Marcus Smart, because last night on Twitter, when I saw Marcus Smart going off, obviously I wanted to know how my pal Phil Perry was feeling and if he was impressed by the performance. Phil did give Smart some props, but then it was like, but he went 2 for 11 in the first half. So, and was like not all that awesome. Come on, Phil, you're still not on the Marcus Smart train?
Why can't I point out that Marcus Smart wasn't necessarily the reason the Celtics got out to a 25-point lead at half? He had the most field goal attempts on the team through the first 2 quarters, and he had made 2 of them. Now, what he does outside of his shot-making ability is phenomenally important. The playmaking. He had 7 assists, I believe, in the first half. Unbelievable. That's huge, just to take that load off of Jason Tatum, who in Game 1 had absolutely nothing to give in the second half, I think in part because he was also tasked with running the offense and trying to get the team into their offense. So he's vitally important there. He's vitally important on the defensive side of the ball. I just don't get carried away with him making an undrafted player fall down on a crossover or all the three-pointers that he makes in the second half when the game is out of hand, because to me, that's not why he's important to this team. It's all of the other stuff that you guys mentioned. But I would not go crazy looking at the point total here and say, this guy's the second most important piece to why they're here right now. That, to me, is a little strong.
Well, if you're looking at the box score, no, it's not going to show up there. But what I like about Marcus Smart and his game is that all the stuff he does away from the ball and outside of scoring, even a guy like me, I can see that. It was tough for me to see with Al Horford his first time around with the Celtics, Max. And now it's becoming more apparent, especially when he went off for 40 against the Bucks. But when Marcus Smart is out there facilitating and making stuff happen other than showing up in the box score, even I can see it. If I can see it, it must be pretty important.
So we agree.
Evident.
So you're agreeing with me, Hardy, right? Because what I'm saying is I think people get a little carried away with what he does in terms of his points. I like all that stuff that you're talking about. That's what makes him important to this team.
But isn't that almost as important as his points? Because you've got scorers on the team. And I don't know what your reaction was when the three of us, or at least Max and Hardy for sure, said that they think he's probably more valuable than a Draymond Green. Something tells me you're just going to laugh at that.
I just think, listen, Draymond Green, Steve Kerr the other day, and listen, he's biased. Steve Kerr the other day, this was during their postseason run this year, he said he thinks Draymond Green is a Hall of Fame caliber player. You know, well, listen. You could laugh, but what would be the sound inside the media room, Max, if anybody were to say that about Marcus Smart right now? To me, this guy's won 3 titles. He's been an all-defensive player 6 times. Marcus has done it. I think he's on his way to a 3rd right now. He's an all-star 4 times. Draymond Green has done a lot in this league.
Draymond Green, when he had the keys. And I mean, when you watch Curry and when you watch Thompson leave, what did he average? Oh, a single. That was it. That's what he averaged. He did not take this team to the next level. And I
thought stats don't matter. I thought it's all about the intangible stuff, Max. I thought it's about the stuff that doesn't show up in the box score.
There is no doubt that he's a good player, that he does so many things for his team. But I am not overly crazy about some of the things that you're saying that he does. And I think, to me, Marcus Smart's ability to change the flow of the game, to me, is and we might get a chance to see this Draymond thing you talk about if both these teams right now play well enough and get together.
And Phil, you're saying Draymond is automatically better than Marcus Smart because of the accolades he's received, right? The number of
he's just done
All-Star games.
He's done it for longer. I think you guys would all agree with me on that front. He's done it for longer. He's been an elite player for a long time. He's been an All-NBA player twice. Marcus Smart hasn't really sniffed that level yet, guys. I'm sorry, he's just not there yet.
Okay, but hold on. You love Jason Tatum. All of us do, right? But we're not also making the same arguments you are. You love Jason Tatum. You think he's this rising superstar, top 5 player in the NBA. And I like Jason Tatum. I agree with you. But by your rationale, he hasn't won a title yet. He hasn't been, I don't think, first-team All-NBA yet, has he? He's only gone to a couple of All-Star games. So how in the world can you put him in the top 5 if you're not going to put Marcus Smart there when he hasn't accomplished the same thing as some of the top 5 players? I got the
Marcus Smart is a top 5 player in the league, Trenni? That's not what you're talking about.
That is not what I'm saying. But I'm saying you argue that Jason Tatum is, and your argument against Marcus Smart being as good as he is that he doesn't have the list of accolades that some of the other players have.
I'm just saying when you compare him to, let's not conflate a bunch of different arguments into one here. If you're talking about Draymond Green versus Marcus Smart, I would take Draymond's career over Marcus's to this point. Marcus is a little bit younger. We will see where his goes. If you're looking at Tatum right now and you're saying he's not a top 5 player in the NBA because he hasn't won a title yet or he hasn't been an MVP yet, I would just say, let's all watch the game together because this guy is clearly on the rise. He clearly has a lot of room to grow.
Yeah, let's wait and see.
Let's
wait until the playoffs are over, and then we'll decide. You know who I'll take? The Defensive Player of the Year who came into the game last night. And
as a top 5 player in the league, Hardy?
And all of a sudden made the Celtics favorites.
Can we stick to one argument at a time here, please? Can we keep it focused? Can we keep it on the lane, on the tracks?
I'll take the Defensive Player of the Year who once again made the Celtics
over Tatum. So now Marcus Smart's better than Jason Tatum?
Over Draymond Green.
Draymond Green, I'm going to tell you what, here it is in a nutshell. Draymond Green has to pass the ball to two of the greatest shooters of all time. You could do that. You could be all defensive, whoever it is.
So Marcus Smart doesn't benefit by having Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown on his team at all? Like that, I think the comparison's a pretty good one. I would take Draymond. I'm not killing you because you guys like Marcus Smart better, but they're both really important to their teams. Yeah. They're both clearly the third guy, right? Because if you don't have that scoring, you don't have a chance in this league. That's why I would have Marcus just a little bit lower down the list. And I hate that I'm the guy who's hating on Marcus Smart now after he just had one of the best games of his life and he was a phenomenally important player. And that all of these things I've just said, but now I'm getting made out to be the guy who hates Marcus Smart because I don't think he's as good as Draymond Green. I don't think that's a crazy argument.
I had number 2. Max had him behind Brad Stevens for some reason. It's crazy. Yeah, that is crazy list, Max.
All right, we're going to move on to Jimmy Butler because that's another little argument maker about whether or not this guy's a superstar. You know, losing by 25 points isn't going to sit well with him. The Heat star finished with 29, but he did get some help from his teammates after the game. Butler not wanting to turn the page just yet.
I mean, yeah, you do got to move on. I don't like to move on from this because it has to hurt. They tried to embarrass us. They did embarrass us. So I think we got to realize that, use it as fuel, whatever you want to say, but realize that the game can get out of hand whenever you're playing against a really good team like them that can score the ball and get stops. So overall, we just have to be better.
John Tomasi joining us now. That right there is why I say the series isn't quite yet over. It's over-ish, but it's not quite entirely over yet because you've got a guy like Jimmy Butler who can carry a team on his back.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say, Phil Perry, how dare you? But anyway, but as far as this goes, so do I fear Jimmy Butler bringing the Heat back? Yes. Do I think it's going to matter? No. I think the series is over for the reasons you guys talked about earlier. The Celtics have more talent. This Heat team reminds me a little bit of the older Celtics teams from 5 years ago. Teams that were well coached, that played above the sum, beyond the sum of their parts, that got the most out of what they had, but what they had just wasn't enough. This Celtics team has the talent. You don't have 2 undrafted guys starting for the Celtics. And I know that there are injuries that have caused that, but you have top 3 picks on this team. Miami has Tyler Hero, Jimmy Butler, and Bam, and then a bunch of guys. The Celtics should be able to beat that.
Yeah, Lowry, Kyle Lowry and PJ Tucker are both questionable. Lowry's hamstring, probably a lingering thing. Tucker might come back, but that does change the dynamic of this series, especially if both of them can't come back.
Yeah, you look at that, and I had a chance really to talk to Kyle Lowry, and I asked him, I said, how do you feel? He said, man, it's a little tight. So, you look at him, and I know he's a gamer, and we've saw him play in Toronto many times, but I just believe, just like everybody else, that the talent level that the Celtics have, and the biggest thing, their commitment to play defense. One thing we saw, defenses always travel. They travel well. And the thing that Miami, I'm not sure Miami is not as defensively sound as the Celtics right now, with Robert Williams being healthy right now and Marcus Smart controlling the initial point of attack.
I'm also just questioning a little bit your assertion that Jimmy Butler can take over a game and bring them back in the series. I saw just a tiny little bit last night, flashes back to the old Jimmy Butler, the one that didn't have that playoff oomph, that little extra gear. I saw a guy kind of tapping out a little bit early last night. I couldn't believe they didn't make a run.
Ish. Really quick, Max, it's going to be so hot on Saturday. I know it's crazy because it's TD Garden's obviously air conditioned, but does that affect things? It affects hockey, so I would assume that even though you're not playing on ice, it's not going to be a comfortable playing environment on Saturday.
It shouldn't be, and I think when you bring people in, it's going to get that much hotter. The old Garden obviously did not have any air conditioning. We had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and
there was no air conditioning back then?
No air conditioning.
100 degrees that game.
And we got a chance to change our uniforms at halftime, and nobody really knew that. So we felt fresh and light, where the Lakers had these wet, damp, nasty suits on, and Kareem was with oxygen. It was a horrible environment that day, but it was a great environment for the Celtics.